Alright, just getting started here. This is going to be a quick update build to the Penetrator. What I did was I changed into some heavy armor pieces, added and changed a few skills, weapons, that sort of thing. Starting out, I went with the Krog's mask, or the Krog's visage. This is a heavy armor piece, and it's in the impenetrable trait, which I've pretty much done that dungeon over and over and finally got it. This makes for a good critical resistance, 31-34. My other set is the Night Mothers, and I've got 4 pieces of Night Mother armor here, all impenned, as well as 2 pieces of Spriggans. These are impenned as well, along with Spriggans necklaces and jewelry. And I've also got Night Mother weapons. Here I have the Nirnhone trait, which raises my weapon damage. On this build I didn't shoot for critical so much as I wanted to go for weapon damage, just because of the fact I wasn't really going to have that much critical anyway going with heavy armor. So I went with weapon damage, and it does pretty well for being what it is. As you can see, I've got the Crusher enchantment on it, and here I have weapon damage as well as another Crusher for when I'm fighting in dual wield. Now, as far as my skills go, on my 2-handed bar I have Executioner, I have Critical Rush, Dizzying Swing, Volatile Armor for momentum, and I also have Take Flight. On this bar I've got 2 gap closers. I have Take Flight as well as Critical Rush. They both work really well, and that's what's pretty much what gets me around the field. And I've found that you can go in the middle of a Zerg and pretty much kite everybody if you use these 2 skills and you run around between them. You can run to one guy, kill him, then run to another guy. If a couple people get on you, you can zip out of there and run to another guy. And I've killed a few Zergs that way, so it does seem to work. Now, going over to my dual wield bar, I've got Molten Armaments. This boosts my heavy attack by 40%. Bloodthirst is kind of my spam ability. This will heal me as well as batter the enemy. Steel Tornado, that's kind of a bread and butter for dual wield. Noxious Breath is a real useful skill that I've added. You find it under the Ardent Flame tree, and it will do poison damage, and it also does Major Fracture, which reduces their physical resistance. Now, as you can see, you have the Krog's Mask, which reduces physical resistance. We'll just say 1500, and Curious of the Night Mother does the same thing, about 2600, 3400 here with the Spriggans, and as well as my weapons. Now, this Crusher enchantment, it really appears to work well. So I don't know if this is broken or what, but it does seem to work. And coming over here, Noxious Breath, of course, we'll just call that 5300. I'm kind of rounding the numbers off here. You figure I have probably about, with everything activated, probably about 14,000 physical penetration. Now, as you can see, I'm pretty well up there in physical resistance, and I've only got 16640, so as you can see, that is if I was fighting somebody else like me, that would remove most of their physical resistance. And the one thing that I wouldn't be able to do was crit very hard at all. I'm right near the cap with this, and if I had a shield it would be even higher. My critical resistance should be enough to pretty much delete that 1.5 times multiplier. Now what it won't delete is anything else you have in your champion points. As you can see in precise strikes, I have an added 20% there. It wouldn't stop that, but it will stop that 1.5, so that's just something to consider. But it works really well, and typically buffed up, I start with molten weapons or molten armaments. I start that out because that lasts 40 seconds. Then I come over to my two-handed bar. I do forward momentum. That gives me an additional 20% weapon damage. Then volatile armor. That only lasts roughly 20 seconds, but it will give you a lot of physical resistance. As you can see, the numbers are a lot higher now. I'm at 22,000 physical resistance, almost 27,000 for magic resistance. My weapon critical is at 32%, and if I go to my dual wield, it is at 42. Once I add a potion, that goes up to 52. And 42. So it's not terrible as far as crit goes. It's not the highest either, but I haven't made that the real priority here. So I like to keep resolving vigor here because it's just handy that way. I also like Dawnbreaker smutting because usually in a dual wield situation you have enemies in front of you, and this comes in really handy at that point. Oh, as far as champion points goes, it's pretty much the same as the last. I've got 56 into Ironclad, which reduces my direct damage by 20%. I have a little bit into Spell Shield. I have 56 points into Resistant. Now notice I never really put any more than 56 in any one tree or one place, just because the law of diminishing returns here really starts to take over. I've got 49 into Hardy, 49 into Elemental Defender. Now here I just did what I thought was best. Reduce the cost of break V by 20%. This is really important. I also have 56 into Mooncalf. Now my stamina recovery really isn't that good anyway, but this helps out. I've got 37 into Tenacity. This gives me stamina back from my heavy attacks, about 9%. It isn't much, but it's some. Healthy, this increases my health recovery. This actually works a little bit. You'll find that if you are out there playing. This really does help. And I've also got 28 into Tumbling, giving me 12%. Now, since I do heavy attacks, I've had to focus pretty much on the physical weapons expert, which gives me an additional 25% damage of heavy attacks. Master at Arms gives me another 20% with direct damage attacks. Now Mighty, I put 12% there. I've also got 20% there, and just a little bit into piercing, just because I really didn't have a good place to put these, but I have quite a bit of piercing already anyway. So that's about it. Generally what I do is when I come up on a up on an enemy, I'll do molten armaments, forward momentum, and volatile armor, and then I'm ready to go ahead and charge. Typically when I get there, I'll weapon swap, use the noxious breath, and that will weaken their armor as well as slow them down by 30% for a little bit. And then I can go into Steel Tornado, or if it's a single target, I can start with a mix of heavy attacks and dizzying swing, or whatever it is appropriate for the situation. And things usually go pretty quick from there. This build has done a lot of damage, and not only that, it's really tanky as well. You know, it's almost like having an easy button for armor, and I've been able to take over a few castles today by myself. Now this is something with the recent changes and the updates I was not really able to do, but I was able to do it with this build, and it was almost, I would say it was almost easy to do that. There's a few places I had a little bit of trouble, but that was because I was getting careless. But played right, you can take over castles this way pretty much, and you can also handle Zergs pretty well. Not large ones that just pile onto you, but you know, you say, you know, 5-10 people, you can pretty well handle that, unless they're really skilled players or something along those lines. You know, then you're gonna have trouble. But all in all, I've had some pretty good times with this. I guess that's about the end of it. Just remember the Krog's Visage, Night Mother, and Spriggans. That's a combination you want to have. And then for your weapons, you're going to want to go Nirnhone. I chose daggers because of the additional crit. That seems to work really well, although you might want to choose something else. But the Nirnhone really does seem to work pretty good. It gives you just about the exact equivalent of what you would get if you just took the Warrior Stone, which I have taken the Warrior Stone anyway. So I guess that's about it. I can't really think of anything else. Oh, getting into the potions a little bit, just for the newer people. These are typically the potions I use. Immovability. This will make me speedy for the duration of the potion, and it gives you knockback effects, or immune to knockback for about 16 seconds. And this is for Nightblades. Out on Cyrodiil, it's just, they're everywhere. It's such a pain, and they'll try to gank you out of stealth, and then they go into hiding. This enables you to see them. They're everywhere. If you had any questions about how to make these, I would answer them in the comment section. This is typically what I use when I'm going into a keep, or say a utility or something like that. This gives me added critical, gives me immunity to knockback, and that's about it there. Now in PvE, if I'm using this build in PvE, I'll use this, as getting CC'd isn't really that much of an issue. And this is the drink that I use. It gives you a little bit more health and stamina recovery, and it works pretty well. So I would, you can either use this or you can use a tri-stat food. I like using this because it works. It just seems that the stamina is so much less of a issue with this. So that's about it. I guess I've covered everything. Any questions, just leave them in the comments below. Thanks. I'll talk to you guys later.